This is Pippi Mayfield, and I am in the St. Louis County Historical Society doing a interview with Dan Streu, who served on the USS Duluth for the oral history program. Can you tell me your full name?
My name is Dan Streu, spelled S-T-R-E-U.
Okay. And were you born and raised in this area or somewhere else?
I was born in Duluth. I've lived here my entire life. The last year or so, I did move to Superior because I rent, and I find that rent is cheaper there. So I got a very nice place over there, so I'm quite happy there.
Good.
But I've been in Duluth my whole life.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about growing up. Did you live in town, in the country? What was home life like?
Actually, I grew up in Hermantown. My parents were both bakers. My dad worked at Johnson's Bakery. We had a family of 7, and grandmother lived with us as well. So there was 10 of us in a house, and it was pretty crowded, but very interesting. I was a middle child. I had 3 older and 3 younger than me. So,
cool. Right in the middle.
yeah.
Okay. Did you do any sports or anything extra in high school? Did you enjoy high school?
High school was kind of tough. I wasn't really into much for sports. In the summer, we kind of rode our bikes a lot, very much into that and staying active, doing things like that. School was kind of tough, especially in high school. My parents divorced. My mother, I guess, became an alcoholic, drank a lot, and it was really tough on the remaining kids at home. My brother was in Vietnam himself at the time, but we pulled together and got through and took care of each other and made sure everything worked.
Good.
So we did what was necessary to survive.
Great.
Yep.
Okay. So you mentioned you had a brother in the service. Were there more family members, even generations before you, that served?
Well, my dad was in the Army in World War II. He got drafted. Both of my uncles were in the Army. One of my uncles was actually a prisoner of war, captured by the Germans, but he was released at the end of the war. My brother was in the Army. He spent about, I'm going to say, 15 months in Vietnam, and I enlisted in the Marines. I was, like they say, there's a black sheep in every family, but I went down to all the offices to join, and it was either, the Army was 4 years, the Air Force was 4 years, Navy was 4 years, Army was 3 years, and I wanted to enlist, and the Marines took me for 2. I thought, well, that's what I'll do, get in and serve my time and get back out again.
Great. Did you enlist just because you knew there was a possibility of being drafted anyway, or what made you decide to
Exactly.
enlist?
That's
Okay.
exactly why I did. I had a low draft number. I think it was like 161, and they said that they'd be drafting all the way up to 165 probably,
Okay.
and they only drafted to 158. So I never would have got drafted, but I volunteered, and I felt proud of that because I wanted to do what I wanted to do, and I got through boot camp okay, and I was proud of it.
Good. Where did you go to boot camp or vacation?
I went through San Diego, MCRD in San Diego. I actually, about 18 days from graduation, was on the obstacle course, and I landed on my foot a little bit wrong and fractured a bone in my foot. And they sent me to sick bay the next morning because it was quite swollen and hard to walk. Ended up staying in the hospital for roughly 3 weeks.
Wow.
And they sent me back to another platoon that had about 21 days left. I had to do the obstacle course again, but I made sure that when I landed flat-footed on both feet and got through it. My foot did swell a little bit. The doctor told me it probably would. They wanted to send me to sick bay again. I said no. The doctor said that it'll be fine, and I got through it and graduated And it was kind of nice because the platoon I graduated with was what they call the honor platoon. There's 3 phases you go through, and you get a ribbon for each phase, and they had one first and second phase, and my platoon I was with originally had one first and second phase, ended up winning third phase, and the platoon I picked up with won third phase as well, so I was quite, they put me in the right spot.
That's good. So then, after you were done in San Diego, what year was this?
Oh, I actually went in from May of 72, actually May 27th of 72, and I got out May 26th of 73, because it was a holiday weekend.
Oh, okay.
So I did 1 day less than 2 years of my enlistment.
So after San Diego, then what happened from there? Where did you go?
Well, they decided to train me as an amphibious tractor driver. Amphibious tractor they're called LVTs. It's a landing vehicle track that has tracks, and it's armored and enclosed, and it can go in the water or on land. It's pretty big. It holds about 20 to 30 Marines inside, and has benches and places for them to sit. So I was trained as an amphibious tractor driver, graduated from that, and after that they sent me to, came home on leave, and then they sent me to Okinawa. I was only in Okinawa for, I think I got there about December 19th or 20th, something like that. And on January 3rd, we boarded the USS Duluth.
Okay.
So I was quite impressed with the fact that I'm from Duluth, Minnesota, and I ended up on a ship that's named after our city.
That's pretty cool.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the amphibious tractor driver, is that what it was?
Yep.
Had you ever thought of that? I mean, did they pick where they wanted you, or is that something you were interested in?
Well, after I graduated from high school, I did work for an entire year before going in the Marines,
Okay.
and that's what I wanted to do is work for a while. And the job I had, I worked at Shopper City. That's how long ago it was, and I started as a grocery stockman, and then the guy that drove the forklift in the warehouse bumped me out of my job, and he wanted to get out of that, and I took over, and I loved it. But being a forklift operator, which was a 3,000-pound forklift, okay,
Yeah.
somehow in the Marine Corps correlated to a 35-ton Amtrak. They figured if I could drive a forklift, I can drive an Amtrak, and that worked.
Makes sense.
And to me, it was fine. I was quite happy with that. I loved it. We could drive, from the beach right into the water, and we could drive on land. We did a whole lot of training, driving, and I loved it. I really did. It was, to me, I was happy when I was driving. It was awesome.
I've seen video and pictures, and they look very fascinating, what they
It
can
is,
do.
yeah. The newer ones are much faster. The older ones, like I was on, are very slow in the water.
Right.
On land, maybe 35 miles an hour, but
Okay.
in the water, it's what they call 3 knots or something. It wasn't very fast.
Yeah.
Too heavy.
Yeah. So what kind of training did you have to do? Just were there a bunch of controls you had to learn what they did, or what?
Yeah, it was basically steered with a big joystick, and it had a gas pedal and a brake pedal, and the joystick was, turn left for left, right for right, and then it's got 2 forward gears. It's got low and high, and then if you want to go backwards, you just push it all the way forward and back up. When you're on land and you turn, what happens is one track continues to turn, and the other one just kind of slows down or goes into neutral or stops, and the other one pulls you to go around the corner. Well, and I want to stress this, when you're in water, it automatically goes into what's called water steer.
Okay.
And one track goes forward when you're turning, and the other one goes backwards, so it makes it easier to maneuver in the water because it's so big and heavy and bulky and slow in the water.
Right.
So That's very important to bring up at this time.
Okay.
It'll come up later.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so then you get assigned to the USS Duluth, and what did you do from there? I mean, you pretty much served all your time on the USS Duluth then, right?
Not actually. For a 2-year enlistment, I was on the Duluth for a little over 5 months, which was quite a bit of time. But we were out at sea. We'd get into the near Vietnam and get into what they call Vietnam waters, and they just kept us out there in case. They needed Marines out there just in case.
Mm-hmm.
The USS Duluth held about 400 Navy personnel and about 800 Marines, U.S.
Wow.
Marines.
That's a lot.
So it was a big ship. It was 150 foot wide and about 650 feet long. About 600 feet long, I believe.
Yeah.
Big ship.
Yeah.
But it was actually, when I was on it, I think the ship was only about 7 years old. It was in very nice condition.
Okay.
Quite a nice ship.
Yeah. So, I guess what did you do during the day? 'Cause, I mean, you weren't taking people
No.
back and forth all the time.
Well, we had our Amtraks, which were in the what they call the well deck of the ship, and we'd have to go because you were near salt water and all that. We had what we called PM, preventive maintenance. We had to grease the wheels, oil every moving part on them every day, and just service them and make sure everything was good. There was a couple times they actually flooded the well deck out in the middle of the ocean and let us off the ship, and we'd drive around so they could supply the ship and bring stuff into the well deck. And they needed us out of the way so they could do that. And when we were in the water, we were training. We were driving and maneuvering, doing different maneuvers and stuff. So they kept us busy. It was we always had our what we call them tractors, Amtraks. We always had those to take care of, and we did it every day.
Okay. So how many tractors did the USS Duluth hold?
About 10.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So talk a little bit about life outside of your actual job on the USS Duluth. I mean, there's so many people. Did you interact with all of them, or just a small portion of them? Or?
We had what we called a platoon, and there was about roughly 30 to 40 of us in the platoon, probably 40 of us. We were very close. I mean, we were we call tight. We all got along great, good friends, met a lot of great people, guys that I'm friends with to this day. Still talk to them and get along. Some of them I have not seen for a while. They actually came up here last summer so I got to see them again. But yeah, we were very close. We always hung out together. We had a Navy guy who was in the Navy. He was a corpsman, and he was assigned to our group.
Oh, wow.
And he was quite bummed when he found out he was going to be with a bunch of Marines. But I just finally got in contact with him just a matter of a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, wow.
And he said it was actually the best time. He really enjoyed it. He said we were a good, close group, and he just felt so welcome. And he was a great guy to get to know. He really was.
Cool.
Yeah. So yeah, we were close. All of us got along great. Even the lieutenant we had, John Paparone, he was a great guy. We had a gunnery sergeant, Gunny Joyner. He was awesome. We had a couple of staff sergeants, Cooper and Wargo. I mean, these were great guys. Every one of them had so much respect for him, and all the guys we were with. We're just close. I don't know what else I can say about it.
Well, 5 months on a ship, you better be close.
Yeah.
Otherwise, what do you do?
We did live in close quarters. The bunks were just fold down. All they were, it's just like a canvas. It was attached to like pipe tubing, whatever, and they just fold up during the day and then down at night. And I mean, it was the bunk ahead of me was above me was very close to my face, but
Yeah.
it was close quarters. But yeah, some guys played cards. I wrote a lot of letters home.
Okay.
So they had a mailbox, which you have right here in your museum now,
Yeah.
in the window display. We'd mail our letters from there, and they'd get home, and we'd get mail call, and so I did a lot of letter writing.
can see why. So after your 5 months on the USS Duluth, then where did you go? Because you still would have had time left.
Well, actually, there was one day, if you want to talk about the USS Duluth, there was one day we actually got into combat.
Oh, yes, please.
On May 23rd of 72, I would go to the back of one of our compartments there, what we called the rope room. There was like portholes where they'd put the ropes through. And I'd go back there and write letters and stuff, and I noticed there was about 40 ships around us. And I knew something was going on because they're doing their Morse code with their lights blinking.
Okay.
And it was like, okay, guys, there's something going on. There's something really big going on. I mean, we've never had 40 ships around because there was 4 of us that were what we call a float. I was on BLT 34, and which is Battalion Landing Team 3/4, and we had the Tripoli, the Schenectady, Saskatchewan, and the Duluth, and we were all part of the float, what they call a float, that landing team. Well, all of a sudden you got 40 ships around of all kinds of ships, different ships I've never seen, and they're all blinking. And it's like, okay, something's happening here. Well, that night they called us into the well deck. I mean, they being the lieutenant, the gunny, and the staff sergeants, and they told us that the next morning that we'd be bringing some South Vietnamese Marines from the ship to the beach into Vietnam under fire.
Oh, wow.
So they said that Quang Tri had fallen to the North Vietnam, and they wanted to get it back, and they wanted to get the guys in there, and they were going to come in actually north of Quang Tri, just south of the DMZ, and this was a very hostile area, and they wanted us to bring them in. So the ship actually picked up South Vietnamese Marines, and they spent the night on the well deck, and then the following morning, and we actually went and talked to some of them and met some of them, and they could speak English, and we talked to, they had some American advisors with them and talked to them. But yeah, these were South Vietnamese Marines. And so the next morning we got up about 4:30. I suppose we were probably in the water by 4:30, but we actually got up pretty early and loaded the Marines up on into our Amtraks, and they call what's flooding the well deck, and the well deck takes in water, and the ramp goes down in the back of the ship, and it takes in, I know, probably about 4 feet of water. And we're up on the upper ramp, and we just drive down on the inner ramp and then into this water, and then from there we drive into the ocean. And you actually go down underwater a little bit when you come off the ship, and you're in the water, and there's only about 8-10 inches of the Amtrak that actually is above water, so it's so heavy.
Yeah.
But the Newport News was there. That's the first thing I heard was a bunch of boom, boom, all these big guns from Newport News. And Newport News was a huge, what they call, I can't think of the word, but battleship anyway. And heavy cruiser, there you go, heavy cruiser. And Oklahoma City was there. And these ships are shooting at the beach. And we're driving through this in the water and doing our maneuvers, and kind of in single file at the time, but driving through the smoke from all their guns. So they told us what we had to do. They told us the night before what was going to happen. They told us that if the ship was taking too much fire, that they would leave without us.
Oh my gosh.
And we'd be there, and they'd have to come back and get us at another time. So they warned us that this was something that, I mean, there was a lot of people on that ship, and there was, we're 30 or 40 guys. They got 1,200 guys on that ship.
Yeah.
So anyway, we're going in, and maybe about 200 yards or so from the beach, that's why I brought it up, my water steer went out. My Amtrak had a history of the water steer going out. I had the mechanics look at it several times. And they always said, we got it fixed, we got it fixed. Well, here we are going into the beach in Vietnam, under fire, and my water steer is out. And the only direction it wanted to go, no matter which way I pushed that steering, was to the right. And I'm driving right into like a bamboo crate that's in the water, and I didn't know what it was. And one of the sergeants is radioing me, and he says, it's could be a booby trap, get away. I couldn't steer.
You wanted to.
I wanted to, but I couldn't. So, but when you get into the sand and up to the beach, and then we dropped the ramp, and we got the guys out and stuff, and that was our objective, is to get the guys into the beach, and then to raise the ramp and back up and get back out. Well, they didn't want us to leave any tracks on the beach either. So we're taking a little bit of water. We got bilge pumps that'll pump the water out, so I wasn't concerned about that. But the deck got a little bit slippery. So I'm starting to raise the ramp up, which I have the controls to do that. And I'm raising the ramp up. And we got turnbuckles, and the machine gunner that was with me, he's also from Minnesota. He's sliding in, and his foot was getting, as I continued to raise the ramp, his foot was in the way, and I was going to squeeze his foot. Well, I could see what I'm doing, and I stopped raising the ramp, and I jumped out of the seat, and I pulled him back and got him out of the way. I wasn't gentle about it, because you got to hurry. Life or death. Yeah. And I got him out of the way, and I continued to raise the ramp, jumped back down, and the crew chief did the other turnbuckle, I did the other one, got back in, and I backed up. Well, I was really concerned that my water steer would not work. But it had shifted back into land steer, then would automatically go into water steer again, which is an automatic thing it does. So I backed up, and I got started following in line, and I was the last one in line. So I'm driving in, and thank God my water steer was working, and we're just going in single file, didn't have to steer too much, And I was just praying that everything, and I went to a Christian school, and I was saying my prayers that day a lot. Well, I was on Alpha 47, that's my Amtrak number, A47, and A48 was in front of me. And I couldn't figure out what was going on, but all of a sudden he's stalling, and I could see that his engine was not running. Well, his engine died. So, okay, well, I'm the only one behind them. I'm having trouble with my water steer going out. Okay, well, they had trained us what to do and how to tow someone in. So literally, I'm driving around them, going around just like you're coming out of a parking space in a way, going around them, and then you got to go in front of them and park in front of them. And I had to back up to them and throw them tow lines, which are big ropes, which are about 1.5 inches, 2 inches in diameter with big loops on them. Right. But we have to cross them in order to make it work, which we're trained to do. So the crew chief and the machine gunner got up, and same with his guys, they got up, and us two drivers had to, operate. Well, was the only one operating. So I started to tow him in. And I radioed him, and he had radioed me and told me that his engine stalled. Because we got comm helmets, communication helmets, and it's got a lever on where you can talk to each other. So he radioed me, and we were talking back and forth. Well, anyway, I'm towing him in, and I'm just praying that my water steer would not go out. And I knew I had to steer that thing into the back of the ship, which is a very, you got to get into there. It's not that tight of a space, but it's got to work for you. Right. The other thing that I was concerned about is, as much training as we had, I didn't know if I could pull them up the ramp. Oh, yeah. With the tow ropes on top, I didn't know if it would do a nosedive and go down or what would happen. I had no clue. But there's 3 of my buddies on that Amtrak, and they're not staying there. I'm bringing them in with me, and we're going to do our best, and if worst come to worst, we would unhook it, and we would have them board my Amtrak, and we'd get in
Right.
and leave the equipment in the ocean and just whatever they have to do.
Yeah.
But I didn't know what would happen, but I just kept praying, and I prayed that they would get it started. God answered my prayers.
Oh yeah.
They got it started, and I slacked up on the ropes, and in the meantime, the ship's looking at us guys in the water like, what are these guys doing? What, I mean, we're the only two left in the water. They wanted to go because they're getting shot at. I mean, the whole time in and the whole time back, there's shells going over our head from the ships to the beach. There's shells going from the beach to the ships, and we're in the middle of all this crap. I mean, and when we were closer to the land, there was machine gun fire, there was mortar fire. I mean, there were shells coming in, and they were zoning in on us. They were zoning in on the ship, and they wanted to go. And I was really worried they'd leave without us. And here we'd have a dead Amtrak, and just, one Amtrak that I don't know if I could I didn't even know if I could get to land again, let alone back on the back of the ship. So I was scared to death.
Right.
But I knew what I was doing, and and I just had confidence, and that's what it took.
Good.
And God's help, because I said my prayers, and they did get it started. They slacked up on the ropes, and they got it going, and we pulled in. Normally when you get into I got in, thank God everything worked great. Got in up the ramp, and then when you get into the well deck, normally you do a 180 spin and back up the ramp. Not that day. We went straight in, and the other thing that happened too is I knew the guys in the ship were wondering what the hell us guys were doing playing games out there. They had no clue.
Yeah.
So I radioed them, and I thought I was radioing my lieutenant, John Paparone. I was not. I was radioing the bridge. They were keyed into our frequency as well. And I told them what we're doing. I said, sir, this is 4-7, 4/8's engine died. We're going to hook up and tow him in. Mm-hmm. Well, like I said, you got a comm helmet, and when I radioed him, I left the lever forward. And they could hear everything I said from that point on. I didn't find that out until our last reunion here in Duluth, because one of the guys that was at our reunion was on the bridge that day, and he told me, he said, you know that happened? I said, I had no clue until you just told me. But anyway, we did get back safe, and it was just, we had just got in, the ship started to move, and as soon as the ship started to move, a round came in and just missed the back of the ship. And they hightailed it out of there and got out to further away from the beach and stuff. And it was, God answered a lot of prayers that day.
Yeah.
It was really something. We earned the combat action ribbon that day. The ship earned the combat action ribbon. Everyone on the ship earned the combat action ribbon that day. So that was called Operation Song Thong, Thang, I think it is, 72.
Okay.
You can look it up online. I've got recordings of some of the things that happened that day. But yeah, it was a pretty crazy day. So there was a general that was going to meet us the following day and commend us on our operation, a very successful landing. But he didn't make it, but a colonel did, and he came on by helicopter. The USS Duluth also had a landing deck up on top.
Okay.
And it could hold up to about 9 helicopters, and the whole time we were on, the helicopters were coming and going all the time, doing different operations and stuff. And but it was a pretty neat ship, because we could take helicopters and amphibious tractors in with the well deck. So it's a very unique ship, yeah. And that's why it was USS Duluth was LPD-6 was a landing platform docked, which landing platform's got a platform helicopter, and docked means it's got a well deck for amphibious vehicles.
That is cool.
Yeah.
So going in, you said they briefed you the night before and told you what you were going to have to do. Do you remember what you were feeling, what was going through your head?
Well, I was very scared. You know, I was very close to my family. Um, I was very fearful that we would not get back safe, and I didn't know what my family would go through if I did not get back home, and if they got a visitor from the Marine Corps,
Yeah.
letting them know that their son was killed in combat. I feared for them more than I did myself. It wasn't about me.
Right.
I was trained for what I had to do. I knew what I had to do. The crew chief of my Amtrak had no concerns whatsoever. I knew when the operation, when they told us, I knew I'd be driving. I knew I was the best driver. And the other guy that, you know, there was three of us on that. There's a crew chief, a machine gunner, and a driver. Well, we'd take turns driving, and we both had to be, you know, trained as drivers.
Right.
Of course, he could drive too, but I knew I was the best driver,
Mm-hmm.
and I knew how to handle it. It's just confidence.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how much time was it between when you got off the ship and headed toward the beach and when you got back on? I mean, was it like minutes, hours?
About 6 months. It seemed like hours, but I would guess we did sit kind of dead in the water for a while. Air Force B-52s, they clued us in. The B-52s would bomb the beach first, and Navy jets would come in with dropping napalm bombs on the beach. It was crazy to watch because they'd dive down and drop napalm and then shoot back up, straight up again.
Yeah.
When the shells went off from the B-52s, we're sitting there waiting for that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And we're sitting with our heads above. There's a hatch that you open,
Okay.
and you could just feel the air on your face. It's just like a fan going poof, poof, poof on your face
Yeah.
from the concussion from the shells. And then I looked at my crew chief and I said, wow.
You know you're
You know?
close to the action.
But that was a sign. As soon as they bombed the beach, then we went in.
Okay.
And we got the signal from the sergeant that, you know, and he was our, I guess, commander, you know, but he'd give the signals and he just set in. We're all in not single file at that time, but more of a flank where you're all lined up together,
Yeah.
side by side, and we just headed in together.
Hmm.
So,
Wow. So
but that
after-
was,
oh.
I found it interesting because here I am from Duluth. I ended up on the Duluth. I'm an amphibious tractor driver, and I'm earning the combat action ribbon on a ship that my city was named after,
That is cool.
and pretty proud of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy that we all made it back because it was a very horrendous day.
Did you lose anybody
No.
on your ship? Good.
No, there was actually one South Vietnamese Marine, when he was getting out of the Amtrak, took a grazing wound in the neck.
Okay.
We think it was what we call a cook-off round from the machine gun that's on the Amtrak. We carry 50 caliber machine guns, which are in a turret. And when machine gun, no one was touching it, the barrel goes down.
Okay.
And because he was running it, the barrel gets hot
Yeah.
and the round stays in there, and when it gets hot enough, it cooks off. It goes
Oh,
off by
okay.
itself without the trigger being, and they figure he probably took a cook-off round. It just grazed his neck, not a big one, but they put him back on the Amtrak and hauled him back to the USS Duluth, and that's the only casualty I knew of. Those guys did get into combat with the North Vietnamese Marines, which they were going to.
Right.
I'm sure they suffered some casualties, but they took more than they suffered. They took more casualties than they had themselves, and they. So it was quite successful, very helpful to the South Vietnam.
In your 5 months on the ship, did you have any leave time or ports that you guys went and explored or anything like that?
Sure, we did. First place we went to was Subic Bay, Philippines. What is it, Olongapo City, I guess. Went in there, and of course, being young and in the Marines, we went to town and had a few San Miguel beers.
Of course.
And we do that. I think we ended up in the Philippines about 5 times.
Wow.
We also went to Beipu, Japan.
Okay.
A very interesting city. Seeing the Japanese culture to me was just amazing. Architecture and it was a beautiful city.
Mm-hmm.
We also went to Singapore.
Okay.
And that was a very clean city. I mean, the shopkeepers were out there sweeping their sidewalks every day, and if you're walking down the street with a cigarette, they're there with a dustpan to put your ashes on and cigarette out, and very clean city, very nice, beautiful city. Same thing. I love the architecture, the different, how they building designs and stuff. I found Beipu, Japan, somewhat friendly.
Okay.
They had some of the shops had one of the restaurants had Welcome USS Duluth, so
Oh, wow.
a friend of mine and I went in there, and the guy that was a restaurant owner spoke English pretty well. His daughter was in high school taking English, and he asked if he could bring her out to talk to us, and I said, yeah, sure. So
Great.
she came out and talked to us, and she just was a student, and also met a family there that was a husband and wife and the kids and stuff, and I said, I wanted to take their picture. I had a camera. And they nodded, yeah. So they let me take their picture, and then they took my buddy's picture as well. So pretty neat. I mean, it was nice. Also on the way to Singapore, it's near the equator. So there's a thing when you cross the equator that we actually went down below the equator and then came back to Singapore. But there's kind of a fun thing they do. It's you go from becoming a pollywog to a shellback. And they got quite a thing they have on the ship and stuff, and we all had to go through that, and so we all became shellbacks that day. It's quite a fun thing they do. So
I've heard some of the stories when I went to the reunion last summer.
I won't get into all of it, but it's a fun day. Then they have a big steak dinner at the end of the day, and it is. They made it a fun deal, but
Good.
it's
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you guys had a lot of fun together too. I mean, you obviously were there for a purpose. You did your jobs, but it seems like you had fun.
We did. We hung out together. Always, us guys were always together. Not all of us, but we went in groups. We never went alone.
Great.
So wherever we went, we were always with somebody. Usually 3-4 of us or more. So yeah, and it was a fun thing. The training to me, it all paid off because that's what we were trained to do. Anyway, when I got back, after we got off the ship, I think it was like June 10th or something like that. I think I boarded January 3rd and got off June 10th. And they let us back off in Okinawa and drove back to where we were going to be. And I stayed there until about October. Should have been December, but they were shipping some of us guys back early, so I think I did about maybe 10 months overseas, 10 and a half, something like that.
Okay.
And ended up going back to the States and going home for a 30-day leave, which was much welcome.
Mm-hmm.
My family was very happy to see me, so was I happy that they could see me.
I'm sure.
And happy to see them. My dad was very proud of me. But got to see everybody, and then I went back to California, back to Camp Pendleton after my leave, and they were doing some snooping around in our service record books, and I found out that I had some pretty high math scores and other scores on my tests that I had done, and they had picked me to work in an office called Division Fiscal, which was some kind of like an accounting company, which we kept track of supplies and stuff like that, and supplies that were ordered, supplies that were back ordered and stuff like that. And I got picked to work there. Well, I told them when I got there, I said, I only got 6 months left, and I'm out.
Yeah.
And I said, if you'll take me, I'll work for here. I mean, that's fine, you know.
Great.
Well, they accepted me, and I worked in an office for my last 6 months, which I loved. Again, it was a very close office group of good people. We had a great captain that was there, Captain Schroeder, Gunny McNulty, and some other guys. Were a great bunch of people. Very close group. It wasn't that much work. So some days you're just sitting around reading a book, but some days you're doing what you got to do. And but we still had to, you know, being Marines, you had to have spit shine shoes and stand inspection, and expected to look neat every day, and which we did. I had to take the physical fitness test while I was there. My sergeant took me out and made sure I passed the test, which I did. And we had what we call inspecting general, IG inspection. I worked really hard on all my gear. It's all laid out on your rack, your bed, your rack, and everything is in a certain spot. All my uniforms are hung. Everything is ship shape. I worked very hard to get it that way. And they came around, and he looked at my stuff and made sure everything was the way it's supposed to be. Of course, it passed, and he said, 100%? He said, yep, give him 100%.
Wow.
He said, good job, Marine. And I think it was one of the staff sergeants said, noteworthy, sir? Which noteworthy is above 100%. And it could have been. But he said, no, but mention that he did an excellent job. Well, my sergeant heard about that.
Yeah.
Of course, we were the only two, and we worked together every single day.
Yeah.
And I was only a lance corporal, and he was a sergeant. And he also got 100, and we're the only two that got that. And he said, you know, that's awesome. He was very proud of me, and I was quite proud also. And I didn't know it, but he put me in for corporal.
Oh, wow, that's great.
So just before I got out May 26th, and on May 1st I got promoted to corporal. So I was proud of that too. I got corporal, E4 in 2 years. So yeah.
That's great.
The other thing is, when I got out, I was meeting some of the guys that I had went in with.
Oh yeah.
And here's this guy that was, he was a squad leader in our platoon in boot camp, and he got sergeant in 2 years. And I thought, wow, you got sergeant, huh? I said, I just got a corporal. Yeah, I said, I had to kiss a lot of butt to get that. I said, oh yeah, you were that way. I said, you know, well, here's this other guy that, I mean, he couldn't do anything right in boot camp. And every platoon, I swear, has got one. But he couldn't do anything right, and I looked at him, and he's a private. I looked and I said, Gordon, I said, in 2 years you never got anything higher than private? No, he says, I got PFC 3 times. He said, but I kept messing up. He said, one time, he said, I actually almost got Lance Corporal. He said, but I messed up again, and they kept busting me. He said, I just had a hard time. He says, I think it's time for me to get out. But he was from somewhere in Wisconsin. But like I say, you meet the darndest people. So, but to me, it was a great experience. Something I'll never forget. The discipline. You go through boot camp. There's no such thing as can't. You can and you will.
Right.
And that has carried through in my entire life. I have never forgotten that. There's things that I have accomplished in my life that I don't think I could have done it without that discipline.
Yeah.
And something I've talked to some of my buddies that I was in with, and they also feel the same way.
Yep.
That you learn to do.
Yep.
And if you can't, you try.
Mm-hmm.
There's no thing as can't. You try to do it, and you find that you will succeed.
Yep. Yeah.
Perseverance. You keep going.
Exactly. And I'm sure it gave you the confidence too, like you were
Yes.
talking about.
Yep, it gave me a lot of confidence. Yep. After I got out, I took up. Well, I did work for about 3 years. Ended up in a factory, which wasn't for me.
I understand.
But I looked up the GI Bill to see what I could do under the GI Bill, and I found out that I could get some help going to school. So I went to the Duluth Business University and took their accounting course, and I became an accountant. And I did that for 40 years, and I just recently retired after being an accountant for 40 years.
Wow, congratulations.
Well, thank you. I love it. It's the best job I ever had. But I did enjoy my jobs that I had. I worked at a few different places, but quite enjoyable and quite thankful that the Marine Corps brought me into an office, and I liked being in the office. And after I got out, I thought, I want to work in an office again. I like that kind of environment, and it was good to me.
Do you think if you hadn't gone through the Marine Corps and had that office job, do you think you would have become an accountant, or is it nothing you would have thought of?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Never would have done that. So to me, that was great.
Yeah.
It was quite a reward in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Great. Wow. That's great. So then, did you marry, have kids, anything?
I did. A lady that we went to, I guess, maybe high school sweethearts. We rode a lot back and forth when I was in, and ended up getting married. We had 2 daughters. They are now 39 and 31, but they are awesome. Unfortunately, after 28 years of marriage, things happen, and we ended up getting divorced. We still see each other. I did marry again, and was only married for 5 years to her. Things didn't work out as well. We're still friends. We still talk a lot. In fact, I talked to her today. So we're okay there. No hard feelings. Sometimes things just don't work out.
Great.
But I'm not married at the moment. Live by myself with my dog. He's my little buddy. He is sick, and I don't know if I'm going to lose him. He's 14 and a half years old.
Wow.
But you don't have to have that in there. But anyway, gotta have my buddy.
Good.
Gotta have a pet.
Do your daughters live around the area?
My oldest daughter lives here in the Duluth area up near Pike Lake. The kids go to Hermantown, which I am also proud of. I graduated from Hermantown. My daughters graduated from Hermantown, and now I've got my grandkids going to Hermantown, so 3rd generation in Hermantown.
Good.
My other daughter lives in the cities. She's got 3 kids. My daughter up here has 2, so I've got 5 grandkids. Stacy that lives here is an RN. She works at Essentia Pediatrics.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So
That'd be an interesting job.
she just got an award herself, nominated for the Daisy Award, I guess. I'm very proud of her. My other daughter is taking psychology.
Oh wow. I don't think I can handle that.
She's so I got an RN and one that's going to be a psychologist. And like I tell them, boy, I'll never be able to get by with anything.
That's right. Well, good. Do you want to talk a little bit about the fact that you guys still have reunions with the USS Duluth?
Certainly. Every 2 years, the USS Duluth Crew Members Association gets together, and they have a reunion here in Duluth. I missed the first one because I'm a member of the Moose, and at the time that year I was state president of the Moose, and I was required to be at their convention down in St. Cloud or wherever they had it then.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to be there, so I missed the convention or the reunion. But I was at the second one, and I was at the last one, and they are going to be meeting here again in June of 2019.
Okay.
So I've been talking to Don Rowe, R-O-W-E, which is I guess he's the president of the Crew Members Association. I talk to him quite often. So I'm kind of like the communication point here in Duluth, Minnesota, to the association, try and get things done here.
So when you get together with these guys, are they guys that you happen to serve with, or are they from different time periods?
Most of them are different time periods.
Okay.
There was, at the last reunion, there was actually one Navy guy that was on the ship that day that we were in combat. So he was on the same time period. I also invited a couple of my platoon mates, I'll call them, that I was in the Marines with.
Right.
Got a hold of them, invited them up here, one from Rochester, Minnesota, and one from Arizona.
Oh, wow.
And they came here. I'd not seen either one of them for 45 years, so we got together and
That's great.
had a great time. Fun to see them again and share stories, and it was
Yeah.
awesome. So all three of us were in on that landing that day, so I've been trying to get more Marines here as well. So, because it 400 Navy guys, 800 Marines, you know, they were outnumbered, but you know, there has got to be more Marines that we need to get here.
Right.
So,
Great. Are there any other stories or experiences that you want to share, either from your time in the service or any other point in life?
no, not really. I'm with the Duluth Honor Guard. I joined the Duluth Honor Guard about a year ago. Something I'm very proud of. Proud to be a member of their group. It's sad that when we do military honors, but it's something that we do. I know John Warner with your organization here is on the, and John Marshall. John's our captain. John Warner's a member of our team. Great guys. Great bunch of people to work with. Whenever we go out, we try and do absolutely the best job we can to do the honors for the families. So, other than that, I belong to the American Legion and the VFW.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Great. Well, I think that's good. I thank you for your time.